dictatorship. It gets very complicated. So then you move forward. If you're still thinking intellectually in the 18th and 19th century, your thinking then affects what happens to you in the 20th century. So the example of Reagan is perfect. It's not what we know that is dangerous.
Yeah.
It's what we don't know that is dangerous.
Right.
Okay, so it seems to me that it's censorship is one of my difficulties here at the moment is that we agree that we are essentially coming from the same point of view. We might split hairs on things. We might have a minor disagreement, even in argument, which would be fun, about a particular slant on how we view what censorship is and how censorship functions. But it's difficult for us to create a debate here at the moment.
Right.
So what I'd like to try to do maybe is just for 1 second, just rather than focusing on the specificity of, because Carol did it, I can't do it much better except for doing it from the point of view of an artist. So it will inevitably be the same thing, because their question to me is, how do you decide? Will you decide what's the best means by which to communicate what you need to communicate in any given context? Will be the decision whether one includes or somehow removes information that is vital to the given subject, right? So in the case of Ishmael, the belt buckle and name is irrelevant to the assertion of the overall proposition that the work itself has. But if we really want to talk about censorship, and censorship outside of what we have defined censorship in, say, even the past 5, 7, 10 centuries, let's move censorship to something much, I'm not going to say more substantive, but let's just say that perhaps the origins, or some of the origins of the source of where and how this functions. And it has to do with what I would call information flow. Boycotting something, censorship, is about control of information. It's about people who have information and people who do not have information. It's a dissemination of that information in various manners which allow people to be indoctrinated in order to believe particular set of values. So is your ethics, your morals, the qualities and principles that you believe in as an individual, how are those formed? They're formed through a socialization based on the country that you were born in, based on the hierarchy of that country within a social, economic, political environment that suggests that someone can dictate to other individuals how, when, and why something will happen. So the illegal war in South America, which there have been thousands of illegal wars run by the United States in more countries than one can count. But the United States didn't invent this. This is something, this is age old. But I have a favorite way to start about flow of information, and what is it that you understand? What's the difference between understanding a thing and believing a thing? When can you make the distinction between a piece of information that has been given to you, for example, and have a way to decipher the motivation behind the dissemination of a particular piece of information? So my absolute favorite is Galileo. Okay, it's just really simple. It's just really, really simple. You have a man, smarter than probably your average individual, running around on the street at this particular time, and he makes an argument for heliocentrism. He suggests that the Earth is not the center of the entire universe, okay? And that perhaps the cosmology of the world that you live in is not what you think it is. It is not what you were told that it was. So if one person steps up and says, no, The cosmology, the orientation of the planets in relation to the universe and solar system functions like this, and it goes contrary to everything else that you have been told, but you have not been told why you have been told this information, which is clearly to control you, to manipulate you. It has to do with monotheology, it has to do with politics, it has to do with finances, it has to do with everything that every war has ever had that has been started over, which is wealth, power, and control of individuals. So if you're told that the Earth is the center of our solar system, and you believe that, then all of a sudden someone else says that something's different, the information immediately is stopped. Right there, boom, gone, zero, nothing. There's no way to refute what the central core of the disseminators of information can deliver to you. So for example, in Carol's example, what happens is you know that the Earth is not the center, but you feel completely helpless. There is absolutely no way to make an argument to anybody. If I told you the world was flat today, you would laugh at me. But what if I made an argument that was rock solid scientifically to prove to you the world was flat? You would walk out of here laughing at me because you know the world isn't flat. How do you know the world isn't flat? That's really, how do you know? What is the basis of the information that you use in order to evaluate what you are told, either by individuals who are your faculty members, your teachers, your parents, the politicians, the society, your priests, your rabbis? It makes absolutely no difference. But what is the motivation behind the dissemination of that information that they want you to believe, and why do they want you to believe this information over this information?
But isn't then what Galileo started essentially is the process towards enlightenment and everything that came after that, and culminating with our ability to employ critical thinking,
right,
to basically say, wait, look, let me look at my belief system at any given point?
That's right. That's right.
I think maybe,
I mean, that's my only point, is just
yeah.
When do you actually open up information to be challenged at every moment, at every level, so that the opportunity to critically examine that information has the possibility to be weighed fairly amongst a group of individuals who are the regulators of the society? And right now, I mean, I don't have much to say about the individuals who regulate our society or supposedly manage the country that we live in. I'm just trying to make the point that that censorship has not begun with us in the 20th century or the 19th century, 18th century. Yeah. I'm talking about the censorship of information and the flow of information and how and why we tell each other what we want to believe. That's really my point.
Yeah, and I think the Galileo paradigm is really brilliant, because all of us today say, oh, they were so stupid back then. Of course, we all know that the sun is the center. So it makes it's almost, it's not a Eurocentrism, because it's a 21st century centrism that, that we're like smarter or something. But we can make the same Galileo paradigm that's happening right now with global warming.
That's right. Yeah. There you go. Now you're,
it's like, and so if you look at the United States, politicians in power in the United States are probably the only country in the world where people are still debating climate change.
Whether it's happening or not.
Whether it's real.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you then,
the argument is obviously for ideological, for political, for economic reasons, that there are people who are determined to not give validity to climate change.
I mean, I'm just going to read this one little thing just to the severity. Carol's absolutely correct. I'm just using a very old example because it's one of the premier examples.
But it's perfect because it really lets you see.
It is paradigmatic.
It's right. Perfect. But listen to what they said. This was the result of his Inquisition. Listen. Just take me 2 seconds. Just check out the thinking here and the use of language. It says, with the loss of many of his defenders in Rome because of dialogues concerning the two chief world systems, Galileo was ordered to stand trial on suspicion of heresy in 1633. The sentence of the Inquisition was in 3 parts. This is the sentence of the Inquisition. Galileo was found vehemently suspect of heresy, namely of having held the opinion that the sun lies motionless at the center of the universe, that the earth is not at its center and moves, and that one may hold and defend an opinion as probable after it has been declared contrary to Holy Scripture. To Holy Scripture, okay? He was required to curse and detest these opinions. Point 2, he was sentenced to formal imprisonment at the pleasure of the Inquisition. On the following day, he was condemned to house arrest, which he remained under for the rest of his life. Point 3, in his offending book Dialogue, it was banned. It was in an action that was announced at the trial that any publication of these works was forbidden, any discussion of the works were forbidden, and any future reference to these works was forbidden. This is how you control information. This is how you control people's thinking. So do what Carol suggests, take that same exact model and let's apply it to Fox 13. You know, I mean, and they're the least of our problems in terms of this debate, this subject area.
But it seems, I mean, based on when you were telling what the government official was saying about the Fox News as the litmus test, I was kind of shocked by it because that eliminates a lot. I mean, a lot. And so if that is the litmus test, we're stuck with landscape painting.
Yes. But also look how the schools are being cut back, how education's being cut back. I mean, art is powerful. Art is both, in my opinion, art is the most powerful weapon we have. I mean, a gun can make you change your behavior, but art can affect your hearts and mind. And that's why art is the first thing that gets cut out of the budget. But critical thinking they don't want critical thinkers because an educated critical thinking populace is hard to control.
Let me then ask, because as Daniel is saying, it's pretty obvious that we're all sitting here and we're in agreement, like censorship is bad, and we all need to have more art and more education and more freedom. But what about the more kind of difficult questions beyond that? For example, something that came up to me was the issue of censorship and value criteria. How can we make that distinction? Because I have an vested interest in this question of discrimination as a form of censorship, and then when the question of discrimination comes up, you always have those kinds of answers ready there for you. When you were introducing in the beginning and you said, well, why did X, Y, Z didn't get the job? Why did X, Y, Z didn't get the grant? And when you're talking about these kinds of federal grants, for which there are like dozens of applicants, it's so easy from the perspective of the power structure to say, well, this is based on a criteria of excellence, for example. And it's really easy. There's nothing easier than to argue this artwork is better than that. I could as an art historian, I could just kind of make these arguments that I don't even believe in and that can sound really good. So when there's several people applying for a job and this person is chosen over that one, it's not so hard to say this is the better person. And up until we sort of realized that the better person is always a white male and woke up and said, wait a minute, there's discrimination going on. But we've established that, and ever since we know that discrimination continues. And Adorno said, I'm paraphrasing loosely, every image of violence has the ability to elicit pleasure. So, images that are horrible, or images that are violent, or sometimes maybe documentation of actual violence, and by extension, of course, questions about pornography. When is something, so it's, is there such a thing as positive censorship? Can we just freely open everything up? It runs parallel when you're talking about power structures. Of course, there's a huge issue now up in debate in the news about the question of secrecy, state secrecy, like what should be secret and what should, and they make the argument that certain things must be secret. Is that a form of censorship? Is that a form of just kind of hiding whatever it is that they need to hide and not revealing? So there's many areas where they're the gray area.